Good evening, everyone, and welcome to an Alternative Perspective online networking. My name is Leon Elaine, and I am the founder of an Alternative Perspective. Tonight, we're going to be joined by Ynes and Shih-Ching, who are going to be sharing their experiences of neurodiversity with us. So we're now going to do introductions. So we're going to introduce you to our co-host for the evening, who will be Lauren. Lauren, would you like to give a brief introduction?
Hi everyone, my name is Lauren, I'm 22 years old and I have Tourette syndrome. I am a passionate neurodiversity advocate and I represent Tourette's Action on the National Neurodiversity Youth Council.
Thank you, Lauren. So we're now going to introduce our speakers. Ynes, would you like to introduce yourself?
Okay. Hi everyone. My name is Ynes Hernandez-Day. I'm from England, Spain, and Switzerland, and I grew up in living overseas most of my life. I was diagnosed with dyscalculia when I was 9 and ADHD when I was 18, and I represent the Dyscalculia Network on the Neurodiversity Youth Council.
Thank you, Ynes. And Shih-Ching?
Hello, good evening, everyone. I'm Shih-Ching. I'm originally from Taiwan, but I live in London for the past 20 years. So I am a mom of a neurodivergent child who has autism. And then I am, because of him, he kind of inspired me to become a coach for neurodivergent families. So today I'm going to share my kind of experience as a mom and then also some people I work with. Yes. Look forward to it.
Now we're going to introduce you to Tony, who's our tech guy.
Hi, guys. I'm pleased to be here once again. Honestly, I'm just looking forward to the testimonies that I'm going to hear today.
Okay, so we will now begin with the speeches. And first up is Ynes.
Okay, so I was diagnosed with dyscalculia when I was 9. And I for context of how I got diagnosed, we were given torture tables when I was younger for homework for maths. And if you don't know what that is, a torture table is basically like a test for your times tables, where you have to fill out all of your times tables. And I would have loads of other homework that I would be absolutely fine doing. I would be fine with my English homework, my history homework. I would be fine with everything. But the moment I got to my torture tables, I would procrastinate. And my mum never understood why. And this was when I was in primary school. Everyone else would do them and they would be beating their times. And I would be either getting slower or just having the same time every single time. Even though I'd been doing it over and over and over again, I'd still get them wrong and I'd still be really, really slow. And so she just never understood why. And she never understood why I kept procrastinating as well. So she asked me one day, she was like, why do you keep avoiding this? And I said, because the numbers keep moving. And she was like, okay, that's odd. That sounds like dyslexia, but is there a version for maths? I've never heard of that. So she does some research and she finds out that it's called dyscalculia. And she goes to my school teachers and she talks to them about it, and they've all noticed the things that she's been talking about. But because I was so good at masking and because I was so good at everything else, I wasn't as far behind as I needed to be for the NHS to give me a free through the school, for the school to push me to the NHS to get a free diagnosis done. So I didn't know what to do because, well, they didn't know what to do. I was like 9, but basically they didn't know what to do because I was going to be moving to Abu Dhabi within like a few months, and they were like really worried that I was not going to get the support I needed there. So they went private, and I did a couple of tests, and I remember very vaguely playing some games on a computer, a bit like the Cat 4 tests that you have to do at school, where you have to like match shapes and stuff like that. And I'm playing with blocks and moving them around. And then I remember my mum and the lady talking, and I had some orange juice and some biscuits, and I was just listening, and it was all these big words that I didn't understand. So it was really scary for me. They were saying like, oh, dyscalculia and this and that. And I like will struggle with low processing speed and different stuff that I didn't understand. So I knew I had something, and that made me different, but I didn't know what it was. Like I didn't understand it. So I get to Abu Dhabi, and I'm pulled out of class. For every time we have maths, I'm pulled out to work independently. And then when the students had Arabic, I would be pulled out to study my basic skills, like fine motor skills, like cutting out, coloring, things like that, which nobody else in my year group really understood why I struggled with that, and neither did I. So I just thought I was being pulled out because I was stupid, because I didn't understand what dyscalculia was. It is when I get to China and I'm explaining to people I have dyscalculia, and they say, "What's that?" That I'd like it, and I would say, "Oh, it's maths dyslexia." What's dyslexia? That I realized I was repeating what my mom said without understanding what it was. So I did my own research, and I found out that it affects my ability to manage time. One of the examples on it, I think I was on understood.org, which is a website which is really good for research about neurodiversity. There was a little drawing of someone in the shower, and a clock that was like hitting like the hour or something. And I was like, oh, maybe that explains why my family always complain why I take so long in the shower. And then I kept reading, and oh, maybe that explains why I'm always late. And that explains why I'm always bumping into things and this and that. And I started to understand that it affected my ability to manage time, that it affected my visual processings. So I couldn't understand how close or far things were, or the size of things. And all of this started to make sense. And I realized calling it maths dyslexia was unfair, because it really didn't explain what I was going through. It was kind of a lazy explanation, and I started to advocate for myself. And then through that, I learned about other diagnoses like autism, like Tourette's, like I learned about so many other neurodivergent conditions. And I started questioning if I had ADHD. And I told my mom about it, and she was like, no, you don't. And that's because we're so used to seeing someone with ADHD as a little boy who is hyperactive, who runs around, who can't stop making noises. And I wasn't like that. I was a quiet, well-behaved girl who was who would hyper-focus on things and get really interested in certain things and then forget to do things, or not get interested in things and get distracted. But I wouldn't be talking when I was distracted. I would be inside my head when I was distracted. So she didn't understand that I could have had ADHD. Then we fast forward a few more years, and I'm in a different city in China, and my mum has more research has come out about ADHD in women, and she's like, no, you know what, that does sound like Ynes. When I was a kid, I could not stop interrupting. I didn't understand that when two adults were talking, what I had to say, I would have to wait. I would just butt right in, and I couldn't control myself. I would hyper-focus on things. I would, if I was interested in something like Harry Potter has been a lifelong interest of mine, I would focus on all of this information, all the details, everything that other people wouldn't really be interested in it, but I couldn't recognize that they weren't interested in it. And I would keep talking, and I would struggle with keeping and maintaining friendships and stuff. And she started to recognize it. So once I got to Egypt, I had a test for it, but they recognized that I'd ticked off high levels of anxiety and depression, which meant that they couldn't diagnose me until I got that treated. So I had to work for several months with my therapist. I had to get on medication. I had to unlearn all of those behaviors that had been associated with my anxiety and my depression for him to be able to do another test in order to diagnose me. Because without that, I wouldn't have received the support that I needed. And for the IB, the options for support for finishing my final exams, there were two options. There was using the laptop or extra time. And I needed both. So I was panicking. My parents were panicking. The school was panicking. They were like, what are we going to do? She needs both. She's not going to complete these exams to the best of her ability without both. So my therapist explained to them, this is Ynes's situation. She's got ADHD and dyscalculia, and those have, through growing up with these, she has developed anxiety and depression. Because of this, she struggles with OCD, and she struggles with CPTSD, which is complex PTSD. And these experiences come from my experiences of being misunderstood and not having my needs correctly supported as a child and as a teenager. And then he explained that something that had been affecting me since China was that I had developed an eating disorder. I struggled to feed myself properly because at one point in China, I was struggling so much with my mental health, and I was struggling so much that I lost interest in food. And I was struggling so much with my stomach pains. For those who were in my breakout room, I explained that I had chronic stomach pain since China. And I realized that not eating helped that feel better. So then I just got into a habit of not eating. And then I wasn't feeding myself enough. So then I'd be having episodes of blacking out. And it was just a downward spiral. So he explained all of this. And the main thing that we had to explain for why I needed the laptop was that I got tics. My hands would clench when I was anxious, to the point that I couldn't hold a pencil or anything. I'd be in so much pain. So he contacted them, we got it back, and I got that support. But basically, had I not had that support, I don't think I would have gotten into university, because I wouldn't have had the best experiences with my exams that I could have had. But internationally speaking, I think the place that I've had the best experiences with it is probably Abu Dhabi or Egypt. There were several kids who were diagnosed with conditions who were receiving support as well. In China, though, I found that it was very difficult for me to explain my needs because it's not really very recognized. A lot of the time, people would see it as an excuse or something that could be taught away. I was told multiple times that if I was taught maths better, or if I paid attention in class, that my dyscalculia would go away. So I feel like as an international student, accepting myself and my diagnosis was really hard. And I'm really glad that I've had these experiences, and that I've had such a supportive family who have gone out of their way to share my experiences and my needs with teachers and with schools before we moved there and while I was there. And they gave me the best experience with school that I could have had.
Thank you for sharing that with us, Ynes. And I think that leads us on perfectly to Shih-Ching.
I'm originally from Taiwan, and then I've been living in Southwest London for the past 20 years now. So I live with my husband and then also my 14 years old son who has autism. So my profession is a Suzuki piano teacher. I've been teaching. I was a music student. Went to music school, music college, and then. Since I moved to the UK, I kind of trained as a Suzuki piano teacher for about 20 years. But because my son is on the autistic spectrum, I felt the journey as a parent was hard. But as I mentioned to my group earlier, I feel I'm in a kind of quite balanced state. So I feel I can help people. So I become a certified coach. And then also, I'm also a peer educator for Autism Central. So peer educator means we are not like psychologists or clinical specialists, but we are parents who have experience working with or living with children with autism or young person with autism. I'd like to share with you about like neurodiversity, and then as a parent and a coach, like navigating the SEN systems. So neurodiversity, as we know, is it's conditions like autism, ADHD, Tourette, dyslexia, dyscalculia, dysgraphia, a lot of this all fall into this umbrella of neurodiversities. And then I think the challenging, seeing my son, seeing people I work with, I found is like the world is designed for neurotypical people. So for neurodiversity divergent individual, they have to work extra hard to be able to fit in. So for example, just very simple, making eye contact to socialize with people or have a social noun. Oh, this is really, really difficult. And then this picture, when I saw it, I kind of really, it touched my heart, because I often think I'm the one on the right-hand side and my son is the one on the left-hand side. So when I communicate with him, I feel like I'm logical and then thinking about, and I'm very clear telling him what to do. He might be the person on the left-hand side, receive information with a lot of tango up, but perhaps in his world, he is the one on the right-hand side. I'm the one on the left-hand side. But I found this one, for me, is kind of like talking to him is quite powerful for me. And then as we say, there are so many challenges in life. So neurodivergent people have more high ratio of mental health issue like anxiety, stress, phobia, panic attack, or depression. And also there's also co-occurrence and similarities. So for example, like depression and anxiety, panic attack, it happened in autistic people, autistic children, but also ADHD or dyslexia. Earlier, like Ynes talked about dyscalculia. All this, there's some overlap. And then also the sensory profile, sometimes too bright, too noisy, too smelly, all could trigger a lot of things. But it's also the interesting is because it's spectrum. So some people might find it okay with this smell, but not okay with another smells. And another thing is this alexithymia. I don't know how many people knows this term. So this comes from a Greek word, means word without feelings. So this happened to a lot of autistic individuals. Like it's struggle to recognize the feeling, to describe the feeling, and then also to articulate it. So I found like when navigating the same system for parents is to understand the legal rights. Like if you're in the UK, there's this kind of EHCP, health education child the plan, and it's available to support and involved with engaging with schools and local authorities, and then just be kind of like advocate, like always put your child to support your child's put your child's needs as a priority. And it sounds really ideal, but I have found so many parents who have enormous strength to fight for their children's right. Because, for example, like even you talk about EHCP, it takes ages, even just to book an appointment with the children's and mental health, this unit, we call it a camp. It takes right now, the average year to wait is two years. And then, so there are lack of information and the bureaucracy and delays. And so just imagine the feeling for the parents. So there's this figure, all this figure is kind of like to tell you there's a big impact for parents, the parents' mental health. So, for example, like 43% of the parents and carer say they had mental and physical health conditions developed or become worse since they became a carer for their children or the person who look after. So parents mental health is also a big factor. So I often in my coaching, I say, like, encourage parents to do something they like, to look after themselves, about what they can do because I believe happy parents, you will raise the happy children. I remember someone say, Dean Beadle is another autistic advocate. He was saying, like, it's not about awareness. Like, neurodiversity awareness is not enough. It's inclusion. To be inclusive is more important, which I found, oh yeah, it is, huh? So what we can do is kind of to help them to predict the situation, and then to kind of think about the sensory safeties, and then also relational safeties, and then also like kind of listen carefully about what need to change quickly. Another thing I want to address is, because I have this privilege as a Taiwanese in the UK, and then also my teaching is Suzuki method, which is a Japanese method. So I work with lots of Far Eastern children, like Chinese children, the parents. And then, so they often put education as their priority. So one of the clients I work with is a Hong Kong mom. They moved from Hong Kong to London, and the child is on the autistic spectrum, also ADHD. And he was 10, and he was very unsettled. So he was there was some like aggressive behavior in the classroom. So when I asked the mom, so what is your main concern? And she actually say, I'm worried about my son couldn't catch up with education work. So this is not the only case I know. I also have another case. So where I'm coming from is sometimes when this culture is focusing on education so much, when they have a neurodivergent child, they missed the priority. The priority is actually not whether he can't catch up with education system. It's more like managing his anxiety, managing his mental health. So there is this saying, the behavior of thinking education is important is because of this saying in Chinese, is that all things are inferior and then only reading is superior. So sometimes when you meet with different people from different cultural background, I'm sure everybody has many, many different stories, can say, consider cultural difference as a fact as well. And then another thing is about the family barrier. I'm sure in a lot of traditional Asian, Indian family, but in Chinese culture, families there's no family boundaries. They say whatever they think, and those words can be hurtful. So I remember my sister was telling me, like, asking me, so because we got married and then waited for 6 years to have my son. So she would say, oh, so is your husband thinking it's okay to have a son who is so troublesome? And I was like really furious, because sometimes the family boundaries, some word you just shouldn't say. Yes. And then I like to share this quote from one of the clients I work with. So she told me, like, teach a child, an autistic child, but I think that can apply to any neurodivergent child or person. Teach him or her the way you would teach others. And it might take him or she longer, but they will get there eventually with their own time. And when I see my son is slower, but he tends to always catch up at the end, and that's something really, that little bit is really rewarding. And And then so I kind of like tend to say that there's some four A's. One is awareness. Once you are aware of someone's diversity, and you accept who he is or who she is, and you make adjustment, and you will change the attitude toward that. Yes, and then that's all. That's me. If you like to get in touch, this is my social media, and this is the end of my talk. Thank you so much.
Our first question is for She. So you have touched on this a little bit earlier, but what are the most common challenges that parents of neurodivergent children face?
I think the unknown,
Oh.
and then also don't know what the future hold.
Oh.
So I remember when my son was first diagnosed, the worry, the anxiety, and then I remember I still remember myself look for YouTube, and then look at there was this YouTube teenager said, 10 years autistic boy can make public speaking, that kind of thing, and then that stayed in my head, and then I was kind of proud, like, actually my son is. He just did a gig, like a guitar gig last night in a little like jazz bar, but it's more like a summer camp. But he was happily standing on the stage and then doing something he likes. So it's kind of touching. So in coaching, we often ask, like, what is your goal? So when I ask parents, what is your goal for as a parent of a neurodivergent children? Everyone struggles, so we can't think about. I need to manage right now, so I don't know what is my goal going to be. But when you start to think about what is the goal you want to do, and that will really help you to kind of narrow down what you can do to help yourself and calm down. Yeah.
Thank you, She. And a quick follow-up to that. So what advice would you give to a parent at the beginning of their journey understanding neurodiversity?
I would say take your time to understand neurodiversity, because to understand it takes take a lot of time. Don't think about you understand it all together, because it will come kind of differently. And then also trust your intuition. You know your child the best. So sometimes I feel like I'm like my son's like speaker. Like I know what he wants, but sometimes I'm wrong. But it kind of like just when you know your child, their feeling. If they struggle to talk about the feeling, but what is that they feel, you can help them. And then the third one, I would say, look after yourself for parents as well. Yeah, as I mentioned in my talk, I feel happy parents will raise happy children.
Sorry. Thank you, She. Inez. So our question for you is, how's your experience as a third culture kid shaped the way you view your neurodivergence?
I think it's helped me view it more with pride, honestly, because knowing that I was able to communicate my needs effectively internationally and get through the international school system in another country where people didn't fully understand my needs has helped me firstly be proud of myself, but also be proud of the fact that I am neurodivergent, because telling so many people about my diagnosis to explain why I thought differently, why I acted differently, why I struggled with certain things, I became proud of it because it became such a huge part of who I am, and it is such a huge part of who I am. I also got these incredible opportunities to work with the Youth Council, to work with the Dyscalculia Network, and to do talks like this, which have given me the opportunity to share my story. And knowing that I've had messages from people thanking me for my advice and sharing my story and stuff has made me really proud to know that there are other people out there who are struggling and that I can do something to help them. And so it helps me view my experiences with less negative light.
So what advice would you give to a neurodivergent person who is considering living abroad?
I think the first thing you need to be able to do is find a simple but effective way of sharing what your condition is and what needs you require, like what support needs you have. Because without that, if you explain it in too much detail, too complicated, it can get lost in translation. So if you have a very simple explanation, for me, it didn't give it justice saying that I had maths dyslexia, but most people had heard of dyslexia. Not everybody, but most people had. So explaining it as maths dyslexia was a simple but effective way of getting people to understand that it was something that I couldn't control and that I had nothing to do with how much effort I put into my maths. Once I had that, I would be very clear about what my needs were. So I think it's important to write it down and give it to them in a written format so that they can see that and they can understand it and that it doesn't go missing. Because sometimes working internationally, especially in places where, like in my schools in China, there were so many students. It was much bigger than your average school. Lots of papers can go missing, things like that. So it's important to have it given to them written down or either through email or something, and so that they can have it, a physical copy of it, and that they understand. On that, I would write down what needs you require very clearly and very simply, much like that explanation. The second thing I would say is important is to practice self-care, because it is so difficult as a neurodivergent person to survive in general, let alone in a country that you're not used to, where they communicate in a different language, where they have different culture to what you're used to. It's exhausting. So practice self-care, find ways to regulate your emotions, and find people that you can lean on and that you can talk to about how you're feeling.
Thank you, Ines. That's brilliant, fantastic advice. And I think that leads perfectly into our next question for Xi, which is, how important is cultural understanding when discussing neurodiversity?
It is really important. I think cultural differences affect parenting and then schooling and a lot of things. But I believe, like Ines lived in so many different countries, you must experience lots of different culture differences. And then, so as a Taiwanese in the UK, I think there's so many, like, for example, I learned so much about education expectation, and then I learned to make it okay, and then just to kind of treat my son as an individual, and then just see what he likes. Yeah.
Yes, thank you for that, Xi. Ines, our next question for you is, so as a member of the National Neurodiversity Youth Council, how important is it for young people to have the opportunity to collaborate and discuss their experiences?
I honestly think it's really important because each individual, like you said, has different experiences. And without the ability to work together and talk about it and share, for example, I remember we've had conversations about representation in films, and I had different perspectives to some of the other people, or we had talks about our experiences growing up in schools, and I had a more negative experience in certain areas of schooling where someone else would have a more positive experience in that area. But then they had a more negative experience in this area of school, which I found more positive. So by talking and sharing our experiences, we were able to find common ground and things that we all felt needed extra work and extra support as a neurodivergent person. We could find things that we agreed on, and things that we all felt differently about. And the ability to be able to communicate with people who understand that you have these different needs, because they also have different needs, has been really, really rewarding to work with them and know that, like, they're there for you, they support you, they understand you. And it's been really rewarding to see our out there. Like with the NFTs, like the little badges that we created for people, like the wristbands, to help them communicate their needs to the police, to know that I was a part of that. And that is helping somebody has been really helpful. And I know that if it weren't for the fact that we all communicated together on what we thought would be helpful, that perhaps wouldn't have happened. So the fact that we're communicating and finding things that we agree need more work in our society and we need more support with is like really helpful.
Thank you for sharing that, Ynes. And our next question is a follow-up for you. So what is next for you in your advocacy journey?
I'm hoping with my like studies in creative writing in university to release some novels or some children's books or plays which feature neurodivergent characters. And I want to work alongside the youth council members to make sure that I've portrayed them correctly. I'm currently working on a fantasy book, and I'm using some of my experiences and my traits as a neurodivergent person in the main character. For example, she doesn't always understand how loud she's speaking. And so sometimes they have to tell her like to be quiet. And I thought that would be something that I could include, because a lot of people don't realize that neurodivergent people struggle to regulate their volume. They struggle with volume control. Also, she tends to interrupt people and not realize that she's done that. So I do that. And then an idea I had, which I want to work with the youth council on once I have a bit more experience with writing, is I want to design a series of books which will come with little like teddy bears of each animal. And each animal represents a specific neurodivergent condition. And it's going to be written in a way that children can understand. So, for example, my mum helped me come up with the idea for the one for dyscalculia. It's a Dalmatian, and her name is Dottie, and she can't count her spots. So, with that idea, I want to share some experiences that people with dyscalculia, that children with dyscalculia can understand and that they might have growing up. And then they can have the little teddy bear as a friend. And so I hope to start this as a collection of stories with, like, for example, an alligator, and that alligator has autism, or I'm trying to think of an animal that begins with T for Tourette's, but like we can work on that like as a group. And that's kind of my plan. I want to get them all involved, but I'm waiting until I have more understanding of children's books so that I can contribute to the conversation with my understanding of children's writing. But that's kind of an idea I had. And I hope to also write plays which can feature neurodivergent characters, which will give actors, neurodivergent and neurotypical actors, more opportunities to explore roles that are outside of the norm, so to speak, of what we usually see on stage, because we usually don't see much representation for neurodivergent characters on stage. And it will give neurotypical actors more opportunity to understand neurodivergency, and obviously neurodivergent actors more opportunity for work. So that's hopefully my plan.
Thank you, Ynes. And so our question for you is, what do you believe needs to be done so that we can all be ourselves without the pressure of masking?
I think it's my dream is in future, like everyone can be themselves and then without feeling being judged. So I think, as I earlier mentioned, I feel it's not just aware of neurodiversity, it's kind of everyone can feel inclusive, being included. So be able to do that, I think first we need to learn not to judge people. So I think the biggest lesson I learned from being a parent of an autistic child is just don't worry about how people look at you, and then just put my child as the priority. And then sometimes I feel I learned this one is from an autistic advocate. He was saying sometimes we feel like they won't do it, but the fact is that they can't do it. So it's really that for that degree, it's like kind of they really can't do it. It's not because of they are trying to be naughty or try to some. So it's really, so I bear that in mind. So when I ask my son to do something or something, I really think actually it's really he can't do it at all. So my vision is like, it can be a world everyone can just be free to be themselves.